What's going on YouTube? I just wanted to make a quick video, something that I just thought would be kind of fun. This is something that I think about a lot. As you know, what's better, Diablo, Path of Exile? What should you play? If you like one, are you going to like the other? And I think that there are a lot of different situations where someone playing Diablo could prefer Path and vice versa, and then also a Diablo player that would not enjoy Path and vice versa, right? So I just kind of wanted to go over the things that I gravitate towards. I know there's plenty of negative shit out there that you guys, can watch and about however, people hate this about this game and this game. But I'd prefer to tell you guys the things that I like about both games, because there are things that I like that I don't like about both of them, right? So I just want to tell you the things that I like and the reason why I gravitate towards one over the other for certain aspects of the game, right? At its most basic level, one's been out for 2 months, one's been out for 11 years. Like, you can't expect those two things to even stand in the same wheelhouse together, right? So they also have a lot in common as far as your goals and what you're trying to do. And if you're very good at one of them, you'll be able to grasp the other one much more quickly, right? So if you have a solid basis in Diablo, you'll be able to make the transition to Path. That move, however, will be a little more difficult than the Path player's move to Diablo, at least in my head, right? And just the main reason is a lot of the principles and a lot of the synergies and the way armor works and a lot of the basic concepts of the game are very similar, right? In that regard, the character building aspect, the farm dungeons or maps, and then beat a boss and then do it again and then try to get a slightly better piece of gear, or get a character to where you think it's fun, or maybe you're tired of it, and then just go start another one, right? People have very different ways to play these games, and it just depends. I personally like to min max one or two characters per league and then move on. Some people like to take characters, into the 70s or the 80s and then just move on and go make another character that's completely different because they just want to try something new. And so both of those games have those things to offer one another. I got a quick little thing here, and this is just kind of a couple points, and I'm going to bring up some B-roll and all that kind of stuff, and show you some gameplay and kind of some the differences between the two, right? But I wanted to keep this more positive. There's plenty of negative things out there and negative videos as to all the things people hate about the games, but I personally like both of the games. So, and it's for different reasons, right? So we'll kind of start with Diablo. It's just a lower barrier for entry. You can kind of hop in and look at the skill tree, and it's much more basic and simplified. It's really cheap to move points around and just kind of swap things and test things and see how it feels. And then you get into your Paragon, and it's very similar where if you're deep enough into the Paragon, it is expensive to respec it, but it's nowhere near the price of respecing in, say, Path of Exile, right? So it does just give you a little bit more freedom in that regard to just kind of dabble and test, oh, I like this skill or this one or whatever the case may be, right? It's also with that, in turn, less research intensive, right? Like, you can with Diablo, it's a little bit easier to just, you log in, you kind of look at some things and be like, okay, so armor, obviously you have to do your due diligence to be like, okay, what does armor do? Okay, mitigation from fizz, and then there's some mitigation from resistances, things like that, right? If you're a rogue, your dex is your damage stat, things like that, right? So you do have to dive into it, but it's far more simplified, right? Even your tooltips are they're just not as intricate, right? When with something like Path, you have external programs that, like Path of Building, where you can come in and theory craft, and you can get all of your numbers very specifically, right? So, like, you can set everything, every single buff or debuff you would have on you, you could come in here and calculate all of it, right? So Diablo doesn't, and it might have that at some point. You know, you've got what's really nice, and I actually use it a lot. Is the there's a few sites for this where you kind of got like a build planner, right? You can come in and create your whatever your build is in here, and it'll give you some form of data, and you can get a little more intricate with it, right? So there are things like this that exist, and you guys have probably used them either to show someone your build or to look up somebody else's, right? But those features in Path are far more intricate. Again, it's been around for a decade. Diablo's been out for a couple months, right? So, it's apples to oranges, and that's kind of going to be the theme of the video. Is that while they're comparable, they're not, right? They're different games, and they both offer me something very different, both of which I enjoy, right? So I'll probably keep reiterating that throughout the video. But again, I mean, this freedom to try more, it kind of just leads into our earlier point is that you can kind of just bop around, have fun, kill monsters, right? There aren't any, like, people complain that, oh, this class is weak and this class is so strong, and there is a separation there, but most builds you can figure something out to have it be fun. Yeah, maybe you have to, roll lower tier maps or whatever, or dungeons, excuse me, in Diablo. Um, but you can still have an enjoyable build, right? I made a flurry build that was just infinite energy, no basic skill, but I was basically as a level 100 farming up, between 50s and 60s nightmare dungeon. Beyond that, it just wasn't very good for that, but it was very fast, it was very fun, and I could just farm up a lot of money and a lot of loot really quickly, and it was just enjoyable, and that was it, right? It wasn't meant for going to high nightmare dungeons, which seems to be not as much of a thing in Diablo, kind of magic finders and things like that. Like there were a lot of complaints in the video that I made that if it wasn't like 4 pushing nightmare dungeons, then it was a bad build. And I'm like, well, that's interesting because again, in Path of Exile, you have specific builds that are designed simply to run maybe not the most powerful maps, but you're simply going to drop far more items, far more quantity, far more rarity, and things like that, right? So I don't know if that's a community thing or just, people aren't into that in Diablo quite yet, but that was one thing that I noticed with that guide that I made is it wasn't as well received because it wasn't meant for pushing to the end of the game, which in Path of Exile now you're going to have to some there are universal builds, you've got your bone shatters and your blade vortexes and certain things, cyclone, sometimes they have these couple league phases where they can beat everything and it's kind of whatever. But generally you're going to have to make some decisions in Path of like, what do you want to play in this game? Do you want to farm maps? Do you want to farm bosses? Do you want to farm the end game bosses like the Ubers and the Uber bosses, right? Do you want to farm the new mechanic? Do you want so again there's and that also comes with the fact that Path has been around forever and you have more options, right? For now, people seem to think that pushing Nightmare Dungeons is the only way to enjoy the game. I don't personally. I think there's multiple ways to do that. And again, going back to Diablo, I think that it's a little bit easier to just try those things out and like try to figure out how you want to play the game. It's not as much of a commitment to start a character in Diablo. Well, in Path, starting a character, excuse me, is a commitment. Like it is. And if you've played it, like it's a little bit more of a commitment. So the one that I actually have here on both is level scaling, right? Because I think there is a time and a place for the way Diablo does it, and I think there's a time and a place for the way that Path does it, right? In Diablo, the level scaling goes with you, right? Regardless, it is your individual level. So if you're a level 50 and your buddy's a level 60, the monsters will be 50 for you and then 60 for them. And so it allows you to come together and play together, right? A little bit more easily, which kind of gives us more of that MMO aspect, which Diablo kind of feels better for in that regard, right? Or at least its trajectory towards where it's headed and what I hope it goes anyways. While Path is it's a little harder to team up. You need someone who has similar knowledge. Early on, it's fine, but I'm when I'm talking this, I'm saying kind of into late game and stuff like that. When people are hitting like the 80s, the 85s, the 90s, and the 100s, because people's builds get exponentially stronger in Path with time and with knowledge, right? So Path, the more time you have to play and the more knowledge you have of the game, your character is going to be stronger than somebody who has less of those two things. That's just the bottom line, which is true of Diablo as well, but it's more so in Path, right? So that level of like carrying versus like kind of playing together, that gap is far greater in Path than it is in Diablo, at least in my opinion. So in Diablo, I personally have a lot more fun. I enjoy playing by myself, but I think it's a lot more fun to play with friends and people. When in Path, I almost exclusively play by myself. And I like to grind, and I like to farm, and I like to min max and craft and all those sorts of things, right? So that's kind of the big difference there with the level scaling for me, is that Diablo level scaling allows you to enjoy the game with your friends a little bit more. Path of Exile level scaling allows you to become insanely powerful and delete mobs and bosses and all that stuff. You don't and yeah, I guess that's basically what it comes down to, is they both have a time and a place, kind of depending on what you're interested in, and having both available to you and having knowledge in both, it has been really nice for me, because if I want to just go have some fun, make a build, play with the boys, whatever, Diablo's great for that. Path is, I put my headphones on, I don't even join the Discord with the boys, and I just start grinding, right? And I don't even want people to talk to me, and I want to just play the game. That's what Path is for me personally, right? Diablo, it's early in its lifespan. There isn't as much content as Path, but now you're getting to become you get to be part of this, the growth of this game. Your feedback is clearly being listened to by the devs and things like that, right? They're trying their best. Sometimes sometimes we like the things they do, sometimes we don't, but the fact is that they're working with us much like GGG does with Path of Exile. They listen, they do all their things. Sometimes they say, all right, everybody calm down, we're going to do what we're going to do, but generally they listen pretty well, right? So I think Diablo's doing a good job of that. So if you like what you see in the base game, I think you should stick around, because getting to grow with the game is very, very fun. And it's unique because these games last for decades, right? And there aren't lots of games that do that. So getting to be a part of it early on in its lifespan and stay with it and be part of that trajectory is very fun, right? In turn, Path has been around forever. So that basically says, like, okay, it's a little more dialed in, it's a little more um there's more options, there's more bosses, there's more skills, there's more all those things, right? But what that means is now you're coming into a game that has been building on top of each other for 10 years, 3 to 4 leagues per year, 10 years. Every new league gives you a new mechanic, some of which continue into the main game, which is standard in Path, and it's Eternal Realm in Diablo. So both of them have those as well. So you can, run forever and start with a build and never come out of standard or never come out of Eternal. So those are all options, right? But again, with Path, it will take more time to learn all those mechanics and figure it out, and it's more. It's just simply more information. There's more, you know, resources out there. There for Path. There's more build guides. Like, it's the information's out there. So with that being said, I intended on kind of going column by column, but as I started to talk, it kind of made more sense to kind of go draw from each one and kind of compare as I was going, as opposed to doing one and then the other. And so, but I do kind of want to touch on a couple of these points more specifically, right? Path of Exile is just more intricate. There's more there. It's been around longer. There's more options. And with Path, you'll need to go find a build guide. Like that's just the bottom line. You're going to have to go find one, especially for the first couple times. I played probably 6 or 7 leagues before I was able to successfully build my own character from the ground up. After the first one, I was able to kind of make some adjustments from, the second build guide, and then the third guide that I followed, I was able to kind of branch off a little bit. So it's just you need to spend some time in the game and learn. There's a million different currencies and all those sorts of things. Um, but and there's also a million resources. I mean, you go to Icy Veins, you can even just go find your favorite streamer, Quinn or Ziz or whoever. If you follow any of those guys, they'll have guides out there, and they'll be, making their own each league. And so there's plenty of ways to find out a good build to play and all that kind of stuff. But it is more of a problem. You can't just kind of start the game and be like, oh, I'm going to go this way through the trees and figure it out. You can, and if you have fun, that's fine, but you can't expect to make it into endgame like that. I hate to say it. I know everybody that's listening to this is like, I'm going to be the one to do it. You won't be, I promise. You will not be the first one to just open the game and then create a build that then takes you into the end game. It just will not happen within the first league. And if I'm wrong, send me some videos, send me some clips. I'd love to see it, but I cannot imagine that that's how it happens. And that's one of the reasons why I personally love Path of Exile is you got to sit there and you got to think and you got to learn and you got to research. Into the next line, knowledge is king. The more you know, the more you've played the game, the easier it gets. It is not as intricate as it seems. Everything is kind of it all synergizes well, all the currencies and all the trading and all the crafting, and it all makes sense, but there's a lot. There's just so much of it, right? So which leads into more options, more problems, right? You think you see this skill gem, and then you have this, a couple support gems, and you're like, oh, these are going to be super sick, right? There's so many things to choose from. But sometimes you put in a skill gem that doesn't work with one of the support gems, and you might not ever know that. If you don't know what you're doing, you might not ever know that these skills don't work. This support gem does not work with this skill gem. So while you have, like I said, you have more options, there's a million options, but there's also more things to go wrong and things that just simply don't work together, right? We already talked level scaling. Both have their positives and negatives. I like both of them for different things. Solo play, I prefer Path of Exile. Group play, I prefer Diablo personally. And then again, we kind of went over that. One's early in its lifespan, and one's been around for a really long time. So one thing that's not on the list here that I feel like I should discuss is crafting, right? So in Path of, and this I'm actually, you know what? We're actually going to bring up Path for this. And the reason being is I would like to, and then we're going to go into Diablo. And basically, I'd like to give a quick little, again, in Path it is not quick, right? So let's go to the Magic Find. So this was my character from Crucible League. This was my Magic Find. I had a Bone Shatter Jug for bossing and all the Ubers and all that kind of stuff with Mage Blood, and then I have Magic Find Lightning Arrow with Headhunter. So this build got pretty out of control. For those of you that know, this bow I crafted from the ground up. It's pretty crazy. So this was nice. This is 100% my bow, and the reason why I bring this up is really the gameplay in both games is fun, but it's different, right? But what really separates Path of Exile from Diablo for me personally is the crafting. You in Diablo, when you get an item, right? You drop an item, you can re-roll one thing on it, right? And that's it, right? That's the end of it. But in Path, and this some of you may like this, some of you may not. So let's just go find. Okay. So here's a no, we want to keep that. Sensitivity feels weird. So these are all your currencies, all of which can be used to trade items with real players on the market, right? Like people will come to your hideout and trade an item that you have listed on the marketplace for however much you feel like it's worth, right? You can research it and do things like that. Again, there's a ton of tools. So like, let's say you want to see what this Venter's Gamble's worth, 3 chaos, and then you could sell it on the market. But for those of you who know, that's definitely not a 3 chaos Venters. But anyways, right? I'm kind of, it's been a while, so I can't wait for the new league. It's been a little while since I've looked at my gear, so, but this bow again. So what you might do in this case, right, is you can drop an item that has however many links. We had some other ones here. This has 2. This has 6 sockets, but they're not linked. This only has 2. You can see there's a big difference, right? But basically, these allow you to craft items from the ground up. I just completely wiped that item, and now there's a multitude of ways that you can craft, right? So you could come in and be like, oh, I wanted fizz, right? And this is all going to be madness to you at the moment, but now you have a 3 attribute item. Or you can spam it and do a random thing, or you can do fossils where you take this thing and put some specific modifier in it and it'll give you this, right? So that's really one of the big things in the game, and I'm just touching on it, right? Like this was nothing. The amount of crafting you can do in this game is awesome, right? And I never played Diablo 2, and I want to say there was a little bit more crafting you could do in that game from my understanding. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But really, at the end of the day, what really, really separates Path of Exile from Diablo for me is the crafting. Like that is the big one. And then being able to craft an item, and then go sell it on the market to a real player. They come show up at your hideout. You trade them for the item. They put their item in the bin, you put yours in the bin, and then boom. And you have an item, or you just sold an item that you crafted. And to me, this is why I don't play like solo self-found and stuff like that, because my favorite part of Path of Exile is the crafting, and it Diablo just it's much more simplified, right? Which is it is a good thing, because sometimes I don't want to have to spend a week and 200 divines trying to craft the perfect item, right? So again, both of them, it's good. The crafting is good for both of them for what they are, but at the end of the day, one of the reasons why Path is really separated from almost any game that I've ever played is simply the crafting. Like I've never played a game that you have this much control and can make such powerful items that really make you feel like you're just annihilating everything, right? So if you like Diablo and you like the genre, there's a good chance you could like Path, and vice versa, right? So if you enjoy Path and you just maybe want to just go kind of kick back and play with the boys and not have to worry about min-maxing and going crazy and really having to put a ton of thought into things, then Diablo's great. And if you're playing Diablo but you're like, I just wish there was a little bit more here. I wish that I had more control over crafting. I wish that I had more options for end game things. Like I don't necessarily want to fight bosses. I want to map a lot. I want to drop lots and lots of items and lots of currency, and then buy things off the market. So there's more ways to play the game in Path. If you're looking for a little more from Diablo, maybe give Path a try. But again, they're both fun, and they both offer me 2 different experiences, both of which I enjoy. So all the hate, and there's, again, like I said at the start, there are some things that I don't like about both of the games. Sometimes Path will drop a league that I hate and I don't want to play it, and I'm sure Diablo will do the same. And sometimes they drop leagues that are unbelievable and I can't put them down and I don't want to play anything else. So I think that both of those will come and go with both games. And like I said, if you're a fan and you're thinking about trying the other one, then you should, I think, and give it a go. Again, in a nutshell, if you're a Diablo player and you're going to play Path, go find a build guide. If you're a big Path player, you'll probably be okay just going and checking it out and kind of seeing what happens and maybe coming up with your own thing, or maybe doing. It'll take a lot less research to do that, but which is fun. It's nice to just kind of go back and just enjoy a game and just cruise through and have your friends around and all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna leave it there. I've been going on and on for what seems like forever. I'm sure for you guys too. And yeah, if you guys have questions or if you're interested, I'm gonna start dropping some guides for Path, and let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you're a Diablo player and you're trying Path, or vice versa, or if you play one and hate the other. I'd be curious to know, right? Because I've personally come to love both of them, and I think there's something in both of these games for everyone. But you know, not everybody feels that way. So thanks again, guys, for hanging out, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.